Good evening, everyone. This is the Puyallup City Council meeting for November 12th. My name is Jim Castema. I'm the mayor. I would like to call us to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Thank you for that. Clerk, can we please call the roll?
Councilmember Adler.
Present.
Councilmember Johnson.
Present.
Deputy Mayor King.
Present.
Councilmember Gilliam.
Present.
Councilmember Whitting.
I'm here.
Councilmember Dorr.
Excused.
Mayor Castema.
Present. With that, at this time of our meeting, we'd like to scan the audience to see if we have some students, and I believe we have some students in our front row here. If you'd like to go ahead and stand up and just go ahead, tell us who you are, what school you're from, and if you're here for a particular purpose, please feel free to state that.
My name is Kyler Bender. I am 13, go to Cascade Christian Schools, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe we're here for what was it called? The Pretty Up Puyallup program.
Oh. Excellent. Yes. Young lady.
I'm 8 years old and I go to Cascade Christian School, and I'm also here for the Pretty Cleanup Day.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I'll have you know that's one of my favorite programs of all time, and I can't wait to read the proclamation. So thank you for being here. We'd like to acknowledge young people at all of our meetings because they're the future of Puyallup. They are the future leaders of Puyallup. So I hope that we set good examples and that someday you would like to follow in our footsteps. So thank you for being here. Clerk, I'd like to now just note that Councilmember Dorr is here. She is present. And Councilmember Dorr, thank you for joining us. I apologize. Thank you, Councilmember Whitting. Apparently we have another couple of youth here. Please go ahead. Sorry, you look very old and mature. I apologize for that. So if you could stand up and just introduce yourself, that would be wonderful. Please do.
My name is Audrey. I'm a senior at Covenant High School, and we're here for a civics assignment for history class to visit a political event.
Oh, good. Excellent. And young man?
Joey Eugene Papa. I also am a senior at Covenant High School, and I'm doing the same civics assignment. We're supposed to find something in local government and take notes on it and everything.
Excellent.
I'm Kyle Whaley. I'm also a senior at Covenant. Particularly completed our assignment pretty well.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, I am going to scan the room. Anyone else? Okay, just want to make sure. And Councilmember Whitting, thank you for being so aware. Appreciate that. With that, I'd like to, at this point, look at the agenda and have a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to point number 2, consideration of minutes. I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes for 2A, which is the October 9th, 2024 budget session minutes. Do I have such a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to 2B, approval of the October 10th, 2024 budget session minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, 2C, approval of October 15th study session minutes.
I make a motion.
Motion.
Okay, moved and seconded, I believe.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now let's move on to presentations and proclamations. Not to keep the young audience waiting here, we'll just get right into it. Whereas the cleanliness and upkeep of Puyallup significantly impacts the well-being and quality of life of all residents, and Whereas a clean and well-maintained city fosters community pride, enhances our buildings, and promotes environmental sustainability. And whereas the active participation of residents in downtown cleanup activities strengthens our community bonds and encourages a sense of responsibility for the local environment. And whereas Renee Muir, who moved to Puyallup in 2020, discovered trash on the streets of our downtown and decided to do something about it. Whereas in September 2021, Muir created Pretty Up Puyallup, a grassroots effort to clean up trash and debris in Puyallup. And whereas her small but mighty group of 5 people over the course of 3 years has now blossomed to over 20 volunteers that go out twice a month to make our downtown look clean. And whereas organized downtown cleanup events such as Pretty Up Puyallup provide an opportunity for residents to work together towards a common goal, fostering a spirit of cooperation and unity within the community. And whereas the beautification of our city through Pretty Up Puyallup contributes to a safer and more attractive living environment for all residents. And whereas, thanks to her efforts, Renee Muir is a shining example of community service, dedication, and pride. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Jim Castema, do hereby proclaim the month of November 2024 as Pretty Up Puyallup Month. I urge all residents to participate in Pretty Up Puyallup throughout this month and throughout the year. Let us unite to make Puyallup a cleaner, greener, more vibrant place to live, work, and play. I, witness whereof, have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of Puyallup, Washington, to be affixed this 12th day of November 2024. And if Renee Muir would like to come forward, please, I'd like to present this to her.
Thank you so much, Mayor Castema and all our city council members. A lot of you have been at Pretty Up Puyallup, so thank you for that. A lot of you tell people about it so that others can join me. I'd like to thank the Puyallup Main Street Association for sponsoring Pretty Up Puyallup over the last year. They help get word out, provide supplies. They also help with the disposal, which would be a hardship on my own. So I'm very appreciative of that. And I'm appreciative of everyone in this room that ever comes on the weekend when they could be doing things that are much more exciting than picking up trash downtown and hanging out with me for a while. A lot of them are here. And the biggest thing, if you can't find it in your schedule to come down, I totally get it, but just sharing that it's available for people. A lot of people will come down, they want to help, they just don't know how, and that's really why I had started the group to begin with. So thank you for having me here, and let's help this group grow into something really great.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
The next proclamation, okay. Whereas the city of Puyallup is a community rooted in compassion, respect, and unity, where residents are committed to supporting one another and fostering a culture of kindness and understanding. Whereas the Golden Rule, a timeless principle encouraging us to treat others as how we would want to be treated, is a foundation for building a harmonious society, promoting empathy, and inspiring individuals to act with integrity and mutual respect. Whereas in these challenging times, the values encapsulated in the Golden Rule are more important than ever, using us to look beyond differences and to practice kindness, patience, and respect in our daily interactions with family, friends, neighbors, and strangers alike. And whereas we believe that each citizen of Puyallup has the power to make a positive impact, and by empowering the spirit of the Golden Rule, we create a stronger, more compassionate community that supports and uplifts all. Whereas throughout the month of November, we encourage all residents of Puyallup to be a light in the community by shining a golden yellow light on their homes or businesses, serving as a visual reminder of our collective commitment to kindness, respect, and empathy. And now, therefore, I, Mayor Jim Castema, along with the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of November also as the Golden Rule Month in the city of Puyallup, and encourage all citizens to live by the Golden Rule and foster an atmosphere of goodwill and understanding within our city. I witness whereof and hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Puyallup to be affixed this 12th day of November 2024. And it was by request of the author of this that that Renee, you also received this. So if you could come forward, please. Thank you for that. Okay. With that, we're now going to move on to one of the favorite times at these meetings, and that's in our public comments. So if you'd like to make a public comment, please fill out one of these so that I can put you in queue. You each have 3 minutes. But keep in mind that if you didn't present this, but you feel inspired after everyone has finished giving their particular talk, feel free to come forward, and I will allow people who have not filled these out to also speak for 3 minutes. It's just that you'll be behind everyone else. So with that, I'd like to have our clerk read the guidelines for public comments.
This part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
Okay, thank you. Keep in mind that I do have to strictly enforce the 3-minute rule. I'll try to be as polite as I can, but realize I have to treat everyone the same. It's just very important that I be very objective through this process. So with that, we're going to start with Gene Sorensen. Please come forward.
Hi, good evening. My name is Gene Sorensen, 1520 13th Avenue Northwest. 21 years ago, I came in before the council to request a dog park, and I was granted that, and we got Clarks Creek Park put in. And for 10 years, it was wonderful. And then we had a flood on the river, and they scooped up the silt off the river walk and decided that it would be a great thing to drop it in the dog park because it's a heavy sand, they thought, but there was volcanic ash in it. So in the summer, the whole place was dust. In the winter, it turned to mud slick. And we talked with the park, and they said that they wanted to do a crushed granite over the top of that, and it's called washed stone dust. And I was all for it, and then the next thing I know, there's bark all over the park. So they've filled the park with bark, but that didn't do any good with the mud, because bark floats. And to fix that, they added more layers and more layers. And at present, we have 16 inches of bark in the park. And as you walk through there, you'll step and your foot goes right into water, bark everywhere. The dogs are filthy. Also, it does collect urine and fecal matter. And so when it rains, you're getting these root beer colored puddles. And it's really hard to keep the dogs out of it, because they do smell like sulfur when you take them out of there. So we presented to the park board a proposal to have the bark removed and then add the washed stone dust on top of that. And that would have relieved the problem with the drainage. And there is really no, it's a lawn basically, it used to be. So the water was always just wasn't going anywhere before, but when the ash got in there, it seemed like it sealed things. And so we thought things were going well for us. And then, so they closed the park for 3 days, and instead of removing the bark or anything like that, what they did was put it in a retaining pond right in the middle of it. It's a 2-acre park with a 100-foot retaining pond that's 20 feet wide. And now you can't go in there without your dogs getting completely gray. And they're drinking this water. And the reason for the retaining pond was they were worried that the flood or storm runoff would cause the salmon to die. But it was okay for the dogs to drink it. So I'm kind of like, okay. What I guess I'm here to ask for is if we can possibly find some funds
Mr. Mayor,
for the
speakers
park
reach 3
department
minutes.
to remove the bark and get the stonewash dust in there. And just to also add, Cody Getter has been a great person to work with. You can see I hope I'm not being political here.
No, you're not. It's just that
But,
you're over the 3 minutes.
Oh, very good.
But Gene, we will give this the appropriate attention, I assure you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Very much. With that, John Hopkins.
John Hopkins, District 1. First comment is I think the comp plan is a phenomenal body of work. I saw some planners around earlier. They did a wonderful job on it as far as I'm concerned. Very comprehensive, of course. Second thing is Inter Avenue 2.0. We've talked about this before, what PROVAC did to the road and the environment and all those kind of things. Well, we have a new player in town. That's Drain Pro. They are looking at not just taking over the 2 PROVAC lots, but one other huge lot. So we're talking about many, many, many more commercial vehicles tearing up the road. Then, of course, there's the issue of the storm drainage. So my question really is, what is the policy? Where do we draw the line? Now, we all know that on site, as far as their ownership of the lots, assuming they buy it or whoever's doing it, you got to do your own storm drainage. Right. I mean, that's abundantly clear. There's no deviations from that. When you get to sidewalks, it can get a little bit fuzzier at times. Sometimes it gets kind of negotiable, and maybe I'm not supposed to say that, but it can get a little arbitrary. But what about the road? What is a developer supposed to do if the storm drainage is not adequate within the road? Are they supposed to replace the road? I mean, this is a big honking policy question worth millions and millions of dollars. Where's the line? I think it's something that you should at least be informed about and weigh in on it. Because after all, what's fair? Remember that all the people along Inter Avenue have already paid their impact fees on everything: storm, sewer, water, and traffic. Everyone's already coughed up a bunch of money, plus you've got the utilities where we pay a significant amount of money, of which some of it is supposed to go for improvements. So that's really my question. Where do you draw the line? What is the policy? It should be clear. And in my opinion, I don't think someone like DrainPro, who's a great asset to the community, by the way, I'm not against them in the least. What are they supposed to do? Is it really fair if they were supposed to rebuild the road? That makes no sense to me at all. I don't know what the policy is, but I hope you find out and you figure it out and you do something that's fair and right for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Carrie Yanasak.
Good evening, everybody. Kerry Anasak, District 2, and Director for the Puyallup Main Street Association, to let you know a couple things that are going on downtown. First of all, I want to reach out again to Renee and thank her very much for this amazing project that she has for cleaning up our downtown. We'd gotten an email message or a Facebook message today. Lexi, my office manager, was just telling me somebody commented that we should clean up the alley by Wicked Pie. And I said, let me respond to that tomorrow, because this person has not been downtown for some time. Because if you've gone down that alley, not only will you find out that that alley is pretty much spotless most of the time, you'll also discover that Murray's Disposal replaced all the crappy looking garbage cans for us with the nice new clean ones. And you'll discover that there are 8 garage doors that every one of them have been painted with a mural on there. And then my good buddy Rich should be hanging up lights in the next week down that alley. So it's going to kind of become a destination. So it's something to be proud of down there. Shop Small Saturday. And you got these passed out if you would, please. The Saturday after Thanksgiving, there's a cross street banner. Thank you, Dan, for your help on that. Promoting this event. We're not doing a whole lot of advertising shop. It will be done on a national basis, so you'll be seeing that on your regularly watched television program here soon enough. So we encourage you to come downtown. The last few years we worked very hard, and we have put some money behind some of our words, and we've recruited some retail downtown. We've got more retail coming, so we're getting away from just restaurants and hair salons and antique stores, but we're actually getting some retail. We're going to giving people a reason to come downtown and shop. So we got these really cool bags. So the first so many people that are shopping downtown get a bag, plus each one of you to include the esteemed gentleman on my left as well. So we encourage you to do that. But even bigger and cooler than that is the first Saturday in December, when we have our annual holiday market and Santa parade. Last year we attracted about 14,000 people for that event. I encourage you to come down there. And if you don't know my market manager over here, she does an amazing job, and this market generally sells out. And I think it's safe to say, you can confirm that this is probably the most successful market in the Pacific Northwest. If you don't believe me, go check out some of the other markets and you'll be affirmed that that is the case. There are a couple of things I want to draw your attention to that is really cool about the Santa Parade that I've worked on for a long time. We've got a couple of things that I don't think anybody else has anywhere.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. So one of them is a bagpipe band. Now, there's a well-known bagpipe band in the area that's been committed for many years at another Santa Parade. We've got one coming to ours, and I'm really excited about that. But the coolest thing ever, I believe we are the only Santa Parade, maybe in the entire world, I don't know, that will have a mariachi band playing Christmas music. So, encourage you to come. Thank you for all of your continued support.
All right, looking forward to that. Okay, John Chontafalski.
John Chontafalski, 1519 7th Street Southwest, Puyallup. Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff, fellow citizens, especially the youth in our room today. Council, Mr. Mayor, I really appreciated those 2 proclamations. It fits right into my concerns. I promised the chief of police before the meeting I would not start a riot, and I do not intend to, other than, sorry, Husky fans, Penn State whooped up on you. January 20, 1961, John F. Kennedy, in his inaugural address to the nation, stated, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." August 28, 1963, I have a dream. A public speech delivered by Martin Luther King Jr. I also have a dream. I also wish to do for my city and not ask the city to do for me. There's a piece of property at the corner of 5th Street Northeast and Spring Street on the southwest corner, I will refer to it as a stone area. I would ask the council, the city of Puyallup, to provide that land to the New Hope Center Resource Center for the purpose of allowing a shower and laundry truck trailer to utilize that space to help our homeless. Second proclamation tonight addressed the care of the citizens of Puyallup. Whether we like it or not, these folks are also citizens. They're not parasites, they're humans. I would like the city of Puyallup, quite frankly, to buy up every piece of land that used to be trucks, and more trucks, and develop a community of greatness, one where we can say we care about humanity. Thank you.
Okay, next, Christine Rutherford.
Hi, Christine Rutherford, District 2. I'm addressing item number 7 on tonight's agenda, the Puyallup 2044 Comprehensive Plan language. The South Hill Neighborhood Plan draft makes excellent points about needing 4,000 housing units and the need to de-emphasize parking lots while promoting transit and pedestrian-oriented design. However, there is a disconnect between SH 2.6, which promotes infill on underutilized parcels, and the current proposed map. For example, walkable to South Hill Mall Transit Center between 86th and 94th are low-density residential areas with underutilized lots. The same situation exists on 94th near the South Hill Park and Ride. Tonight, I propose strengthening the language of SH 2.8 to commit to transit-oriented development. If it's walkable, make it medium or high density with a strong bias towards high density, and then implement it on the map. Next, the Downtown Neighborhood Draft Plan. While it highlights the need for more housing near transportation centers and a pedestrian-friendly environment, the proposed map shows only limited MDR within the walking distance of the train. Inspired by Northgate's success, I recommend altering DT 4.1 to prioritize high-density residential zoning around the station and converting available public use properties to MDR, not LDR. This supports items in DT 13 and enhances walkability. Lastly, the current map places the bulk of proposed MDR between Multicare and Wildwood. There you have 7th and 9th running north-south, using 15th Avenue as the access point to the intersection of Meridian and 512, which is critical for commuters. 15th Avenue is what Multicare is on. There is not another efficient path to 512 and Meridian other than passing in front of Multicare. This proposed setup adds to density to the area around 15th Avenue and potentially making it into another Shaw Road. I hate to see us do that to Multicare. I would like to queue us up for long-term success for them and to ensure that their emergency vehicles can get through. Tonight, I urge the council to adopt additional language to emphasize walkable growth around transit hubs and to adopt language to avoid car-oriented sprawl. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Rick. Is it Bloom? Blum.
Yes. Thank you. This is similar, but a lot more vague. I just had some comments to make on the same topic, item 7. And I just recently was notified of the comprehensive plan about a week ago. I didn't receive the mailer that the city sent out. And so I wanted to make some comments just on what I've discovered and as I've gone through all of the associated information. I wanted to say, first of all, that the amount of work that went into the website that contains all of this information is amazing in its scope and the amount of work that it took. So my hat's off to the people that worked on that project. But with that said, I found that I really had to work hard over the last week at trying to dig out some of the more important impacts to the citizens that are outlined in that plan. It would be nice to see the city in its presentation of complex information such as the comprehensive 2044 plan, that if they could break out those impacts that make the biggest difference to the citizens that are reading it. And in my case, I never received the information. One of my neighbors presented a flyer that she produced. Christine helped with that, and she walked around and made sure everybody in the neighborhood had one. Up until that point, I had no idea. When the information was delivered, it was delivered on a flyer that had a QR code that at that time was broken. So I don't suppose that a lot of the neighbors in the neighborhood were ever made aware of this information. So therefore, we're not able to comment on it or in any way have a thought that they would share with the city. Another point is that as I went through the information, I noticed that the schedule for implementing the topics and the milestones in the comprehensive plan are fairly aggressive, where several milestones are coming due in the first quarter and second quarter of 2025. Again, I would ask if the city could consider loosening up the aggressiveness of that schedule, and then make an effort also to redistribute information that's relevant to the people that live in the neighborhood. In my response specifically to one of the items contained in the comprehensive plan is House Bill 1110. I think I'm running out of town, so let me summarize by just saying I think that the way that House Bill 1110 is being integrated into the already existing comprehensive plan, it is...
Mr. Mayor, the speaker has reached 3 minutes.
May I have
just
30
finish your
seconds?
thoughts, sir.
Yeah, thanks. So I think I would like to ask the city if it could spend more time to come up with its implementation, because right now as it stands, for existing neighborhoods with single-family dwelling homes, the impact will be the greatest. And I think over time, with rezoning, the character of those neighborhoods will change. These neighborhoods are comprised of families that have put most of their investment into their homes.
Thank you. I'm going to have to. I just have to do that.
Okay.
Please understand. You're always welcome back.
Okay. Thank you.
Tom, is it Crab?
Yes, sir. Good evening. My name is Tom Crabb, 1919 7th Street Southeast. I'm in District 2, and my thoughts are on item 7 also. I live in one of the proposed areas that they would like to create a medium density instead of a light density type building, so up to 4 building units. So the audience knows this is up above the hospital when you're going to 7th, the bumpy road, right? And 9th Street is incorporated with that. I was born and raised here. Jim Castema I went to school with, so we'll probably make quick work of this, I'm sure. I went to high school, worked all my time. Yeah.
Just kidding.
I went from Puyallup 7th Street northwest to Puyallup 7th Street southeast. So not much of a commute. But I love the area. When I first got up there, it was deer and orchards and quail, and we lived by Wildwood Park, and we were excited. We eventually got the road filled up with houses, normal building lots, like you would all know. They're not huge building lots. Eventually, they popped through a road and went up to Lowe's and went up to Home Depot. Some people like that. I didn't really care for the traffic. In fact, the traffic has become a major issue in that area. So to stick to the idea is they want to be able, say you had an old house there, you could take that house out and you could put a fourplex in there. We're already on a super busy road that is not, due to whatever reason, is not well enforced. It's tough. We don't have enough people. It's downhill. It's a very fast road. I could not imagine putting, say, a fourplex in where you're going to add, the way most families go, 2 cars per family. 6, 8 cars to each fourplex. Take out the old houses, put in these. Again, like Rick had mentioned, the character would suffer from that. The area is already very congested, and I think without adding something like that, over the next years with our addition of a parking garage and more hospital units, a road going through 7th being continued on through, it's going to be a super congested situation like it already is. So I would hate to see it added, the problem compounded. So anyway, I would just like to see it stay that low density in that area. It seems like a better route to go would perhaps be down towards the agricultural areas, maybe down lower down on 7th Street, down where the Bonds Blueberry Farms and all that. Would be a better route to go than putting them on a hill and that's already congested and is going to stay congested due to the hospital. We got the fire department that got added,
the speakers,
police department. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Tom. Good seeing you, by the way.
Good to see you too, Mr. Chairman.
Kim Field.
Good evening. I'm Kim Field. As you all know, I own the local running company, partner with our local running store. I live in District 2. I come before you as a resident of this community and as a business person. I'm asking the council to be proactive, opposed to being reactive with e-bikes, e-scooters, and e-motorcycles. Now, as you sit on the dais, I hope you all are good examples and you're following the rules of the road and wearing helmets. But I can't say that as a true statement. An e-bike, if it's an assist, can go up to 20 miles an hour. The next level goes up about 21, 22, and max is 28. You keep those things on the sidewalk and you hit someone, how much damage do you think that's going to do? We need to be proactive, create more bike lanes, active transportation for these things before we get sued. There's a case going on, I want to say Issaquah, Sammamish, because they had a posted sign of 15 miles an hour. Somebody was hit. That bicyclist is being sued for $10 million. What saved that trail is that posted speed limit sign. That could be the city getting sued for not being proactive. As a business owner who puts on, 6 downtown runs a year, my runners are at risk. As somebody who rides on the street legally with a regular bike, I'm at risk. People are riding it like motorcycles. I saw that multiple times during the fair. People are on the sidewalks. You have people coming out of restaurants. You have people opening doors. It's an accident waiting to happen. So for once, I'm asking, let's be proactive before we're reactive. All right? That's all I'm going to say. Don't forget Thanksgiving run is coming up. We'll see you all there. Have a great day. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Kim. Paul Romich.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. Paul Romich, District 1. I just want to start off thanking Renee Muir for putting on Puyallup and Main Street Business Association for making it super easy with all their awesome supplies, such as high-vis vests. Just gonna roll into things here. So speaking of visibility, something that's seemingly invisible from a risk perspective is riding a bike on a sidewalk. while many people believe this to be the safer option, it actually isn't. And this is regardless of e-bike or acoustic bike. So riding a bike on a sidewalk is in fact more dangerous than riding on the road. It just doesn't seem that way until a car doesn't check the sidewalk for an oncoming vehicle, and boom, you're struck flying over the hood of one. So that's just one example. I mean, East Main is just a phenomenal challenge if you're trying to ride a bike on a sidewalk with trees, road signs, and telephone poles all in the way. So I personally ride on the road with my e-bike. Now moving into the comp plan, which is what I actually want to talk about, is the housing element calls out a few things, and it just made me think about my former neighbor and still current gym buddy, Vince. Vince used to live in my apartment complex, and we both work out at Fitness Quest on East Main. However, Vince's rents was raised more than he was paid to work here in Puyallup, and so he moved to Auburn and moved in with his girlfriend there. And his girlfriend actually works off River Road as well. So now you have two people commuting from Auburn rather than Puyallup, and that's the number one contributor to traffic, is vehicle miles traveled, not population. When we increase density, we make it, and we bring people closer to their jobs, we decrease traffic by giving them more options.
30 seconds.
Easier availability to get to work or the goods and services they need to access. So, mixing commercial with residential is good as we develop, because it shortens those distances and helps traffic, as well as just promotes more commercial activity within the city limits. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Kathy Horton.
Good evening, Kathy Horton, 11921 59th Street, Court East, Puyallup, Washington. I drove 1,100 miles to be here and witness my bestie, Renee, getting this proclamation, so I want to give her a round of applause. The main reason I'm standing here is because she invited you guys every other Saturday. Well, I'm going to challenge you a little bit more than that. What if we did this on the daily? What if we encouraged our businesses in town by having signage up, by having maybe some garbage bags that are like the rolls of doggy poop bags, but they say Pretty Up Puyallup? Think outside the box. Let's make this something normal for our young kids in the Scouts, our volunteers, our Eagles, our Kiwanis, our different groups that I used to be really involved with. Some of you know that. But let's raise the bar on that. Not just every other Saturday, but help it become a daily. So when you're walking through Puyallup, you go, oh, this business has a sign. I can get some baggies here as I'm walking through, and I can help Pretty Up Puyallup also. So let's keep it going on the daily, and happy Thanksgiving, and congratulations, Renee.
Well, thank you, Kathy. That's great advice. I absolutely love that. Just so you know, my parents, who passed away about 7-8 years ago, respectively, they almost on a daily basis went on our trail picking up garbage, and my wife and I often do that. You're right, it becomes a habit, and this is a beautiful community. Thanks for driving 1,100 miles to be here. With that, we are done with the people who have signed up using one of these forms. However, if anyone else who has not spoken would like to come forward, please feel free to do so. Yes, please. And you can just line up after her. You don't have to raise your hand.
Bethany Hughes, 403 West Meeker, Puyallup, Washington, 98371. I'm here with Jean Swerson for Clarks Creek Dog Park. When we came here a few months ago to propose our idea of putting in this wash basin, we came to an agreement of if we, as our group, Clarks Creek Dog Park 1, went around and cleaned up the outside along the fence with your guys' help, that we would go in and take out half of the bark from the front half where we're having the main drainage problem. It freezes up our fence because there has been so much bark added over the years. It is actually now raised up against the fence, and we have this particle wafer board that goes along, which just acts as a reservoir. It has, with the bark being a certain height, it has also become a safety hazard for some of our more hyper dogs, such as my dog Cherry. She constantly jumps over the fence with ease because the bark is so high against that fence. These are concerns that we've brought up over the years, and we would just really like that to be, more considered, because, I don't want to lose my dog just because she's silly and, can't stay in the fence, and then somebody freaks out and, sues me, My second thing that I would like to talk about is keeping some of our apartment complexes up to code and making sure that they stay within those standards. I had to come down here in March and April and beg for weeks for at least the code officer to come into my complex. We are having problems with black mold, with sewage leaking. We've had our water heater blow up 6 times this year alone. We just got a notice before I showed up here today that there is a raccoon problem, to make sure that we keep our doors locked on our cars and everything. This is also due to a neighbor that we have nearby that likes to feed the wild animals and keeps hundreds of feral cats. We would just like there to be more code enforcement here in our
30
communities.
seconds.
That's all I have to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you make sure, you didn't fill out a form, but could you, I guess, is that your father?
No,
Oh.
no, just a friend.
Okay. I just need your contact information so that we can contact you.
Of course.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to comment? Please. You're allowed one time.
I realize that, Mr. Mayor. With all due respect, there were several people that went 5 or 10 seconds over.
That's
just for 5 more.
I'm sorry. I will try to discipline myself much better, and I apologize for that.
Thank you.
Please come forward.
David Grote, District 3. Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm speaking tonight for myself. The issue is the proposed new comprehensive plan. I've read every word of it. And I'm concerned that political language and viewpoints have been inserted that are not in our present plan. For one thing, the history addition to the foundations element is not germane to any part of the plan. It contains phrases that have legal meaning and are directed to a political purpose. Certain segments of the population are called out by race as perpetual victims, regardless of any individual's personal situation. This used to be called profiling. Today it is called progressivism. Terms such as equity lens indirectly perpetuate systemic inequalities, communities of color, historically marginalized and underserved are spread throughout the plan, supporting a political point of view rather than current reality in our community. Inserting accusatory terms in the public document does nothing to bring people together. It separates us and generates resentment. The foundation of democracy is that all shall be equal under the law. We cannot insist that because democracy was flawed in the past, we can correct by making it less than perfect in the future. My opinion is that our comprehensive plan will be politicized if you allow these changes to stand. I urge you to require the removal of subjective and politically motivated text. Our comprehensive plan deserves it. Puyallup deserves it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is anyone else wishing to speak? Okay. If not, at this point, we're now going to move on to the next item, consent agenda. And by the way, thank you for those public comments. We have noted those, and those that you wish to be reconnected with on the city level, we will do our best to get back with you and address your issue. I'd like to move on to number 4, the consent agenda. And just out of courtesy for everyone here, during the consent agenda, if you'd like to leave at this time, feel free to do so, if that's more convenient for you, or you're welcome to stay here to the very end of the meeting. But don't feel as if that's rude if you do leave, okay? Thank you. With that, I'd like to move on to number 4. The consent agenda is where we put forward a list of modifications, and we ask that we vote on them all in their entirety. It's a time-saving device that we have all, by consent, agreed to. So with that, is there any item on the consent agenda that a member would like to have removed for discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Let's move on to number 5, an ordinance, the second reading. And for those who are watching or those in the audience who aren't familiar with our process, to pass an ordinance, we have a first reading and a second reading. First reading, we pass it out, and then we work on amendments in the interim. And then second reading is final passage. And that's where we're at today. And 5A is second reading of an ordinance amending section 1040 of the Puyallup Municipal Code as it pertains to time parking and additional parking zones. Our city clerk, Dan Vessels, will introduce this and apprise us of any developments.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members. Before you again this evening for second reading of the proposed ordinance to modify the Time Street parking in downtown. Just a very brief recap. This was a pilot project that we brought before council in the fourth quarter of last year, and we have had in place the majority of this year. What you have before you is the proposed ordinance that incorporates the proposed changes to timed parking as originally presented, and including the amendments that were passed at first reading. I'm available for any questions.
Okay. The mayor would like to entertain a motion to put this forward for a second reading. Do I have such a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. It is now before us. So it is appropriate this time, if members have amendments, they come forward, or else we will proceed to the vote. Having said that, I do have amendments that I would like to put onto that plan. Let me go ahead and do that. Let me propose amendments. In fact, what I'd like to do first of all is I gave everyone a presentation, a printout of before and then what my amendments would do, and regarding the area surrounding Puyallup High School and the parking there, and that we have modified, and in particular kind of in mind with the current road restrictions that will take place there on a pilot basis for an entire year. I think these are very appropriate. But I'd like to put forward that as a motion, but before I discuss, to do that, I would need a second. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Okay, so as my colleagues will see, this first image, and I apologize to those that are watching or in the audience, they can't necessarily see this, but I am trying to put forward amendments that deal with Puyallup High School and the surrounding area there for parking. And I have met with the constituents in that area. I've met with a number of neighbors, and I sat down with 2 individuals, and this is kind of the result of that. I think they're very reasonable modifications, but I'd like to go with them through them with my members. As you'll see on the second page, I make 5 changes to the plan that we passed on first reading. The first one is modifying the area in Maine, along Main Street, that is currently an 8-hour parking, modifying that short area in there to a 1-hour parking zone. And I believe that's going to be appropriate, especially if that becomes a pickup and drop-off area. As the cars go down that area and they turn, that is also an area in there that is available for pickup, drop-off, or for people going into the office at the school. And that was a suggestion. All of these have been brought up by the neighbors. The second part of this amendment is looking on the 8th Street, is that on the east side is that would be a no parking area, and that the west side would be a 4-hour or permitted parking area. My justification is this, and this is a very, very congested area where there's no sidewalks on either side. And I drove through there, and I'm not kidding, I came very close to hitting somebody. I mean, it is just a very congested, confusing area because of the lack of sidewalks. And I think it's dangerous. And I agree with the neighbors that on that one side should be no parking. The other side would be 4-hour because you have residences there. And those people, I think, should be able to have access to that piece of property right there in front of the street in front of them. So that seems appropriate. The fourth change, the third change, was that west side changing to 4-hour parking. The fourth change would be along Main Street, going both sides for 4-hour permitted parking, a 4-hour limitation, but with a residential permit there. I will tell all of my members here in the council that the scales are really small. This looks like it's a long distance, but it's not. I asked you to go to the Puyallup High School. We're talking about very, very short distances in very confined areas. The expansion there really isn't that much, but it is in front of residential homes that are constantly being parked in front of by students. And then finally, it seems appropriate to connect number 5, 8th Street on both sides. There are kind of, at times there's sidewalks, at times there's not sidewalks. But since we already have this no parking or a 4-hour parking restriction down along Pioneer that is, again, is there to anticipate an overflow or students from Puyallup High School taking up all those parking places, it seems like it's only appropriate to connect the two. And again, none of these ideas I brought up, they were all brought up by residents in that area, and I think they're appropriate. Keep in mind, I did push back because not all the recommendations were put in place, but I think that these are very appropriate. They understand that this is somewhat of a compromise. So with that, I'd like to ask my colleagues to approve these 5 modifications, as I think they're very reasonable. Thank you. Further discussion? Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. I agree. Looking at what you've come up with and the communication that you've had with the neighbors in that area, I'm in strong favor of supporting your suggestions.
Thank you. Further discussion? Deputy Mayor King.
That was me, but...
Oh. It says, it calls you King, but that's okay. Councilmember Whitting, I know who you are.
I just wondered if it would be appropriate to have a second for your amendment at this time.
No, we did get a second.
Oh, you did get a second?
I did get a second, yes. Thank you. Councilmember Johnson, you come up as Gilliam, but okay, whatever.
Well, actually, I'm coming up as Councilmember King instead of Deputy Mayor King, so I don't know. Anyway, we'll get that figured out, I'm sure. Mayor, I appreciate all the work that you've done into this. I believe that you have done this, and so I'm inclined to just accept it as you presented, because I think that your efforts and work have gone into it very well. So I trust you. I trust your ability to communicate that to us from a first reading we've already approved to a modified second reading, which would finalize it. I guess I'm just trying to get a gauge. You said you talked to some of the folks in that area with kind of, transparent sense, how many neighbors did we talk to? I mean, I want to get an idea. We're talking like some of the outspoken ones, or
I'll tell you specifically.
It'd be nice to know, because sometimes folks, are very vocal that might be in an area, and we're kind of allowing perhaps whoever they may be to speak for the whole area. So it'd be nice to kind of know that it wasn't just a really passionate person that was reflecting the whole neighborhood. So,
thank you. In that area, I talked to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people on that street, specifically on 8th and on Main. Having said that, these suggestions, I met with one individual with another individual who had these suggestions in an actual meeting. And they actually made more suggestions than this. But again, I thought these were very reasonable. And so that's why what you see here, I think that oftentimes people will put forward many different suggestions. But again, the scale, when you go there, you see how short these distances are.
Yeah.
They're really, I think they're fairly reasonable. And I think what convinced me about 8th Street was, I am not exaggerating, I almost hit somebody.
Yeah.
I almost hit a student.
Sure.
And I was driving very carefully, cautiously, and I slammed on my brakes so hard that everything in the car went forward.
Yeah.
And I can see, because again, no sidewalks on that street, that it's just a good precaution.
Yeah. Again, I just wanted to kind of get a gauge, so it wasn't just coming from 1 or 2 voices, but there was at least some kind of a gauge of voices in the area. That's always good to know. And then also, I suspect that that this was meant, this modification was meant to limit parking, specifically probably more for students and staff than for residents and people visiting the area, because it sounds like, if I heard correctly, that residents could park there, but it would take a special resident pass, right? Okay. So kind of more almost kind of reserved for them during those certain hours during the day, is that right?
That's correct. Okay. But there's plenty of parking around here. All of the green is 8-hour. Yeah. All of the south side of Main from 8th over to 7th there is all available, plus all in front of Puyallup High School is available too.
Again, and then the last thing, thank you for that. It helps me. I was, open to supporting it, but just wanted to ask the question. Does this also take into account potential street closings that the school is still proposing, or is this not take into account the street closing on this? Is parking?
It's done within that context.
Within the context.
Yes, because the front of Puyallup High School went to 1 hour. With that 1 hour, kind of the anticipation is there. The school district would like that to be a pickup drop-off area. I don't know if that's going to work that well, but this is, I think, probably make it more manageable.
Yeah, the only thing I was just thinking, Mr. Mayor, is I want to make sure that I'm okay with this, but if the school's desire to close that street off, I just don't want to make these other ones kind of a superhighway where people are zipping through here. And so does this open up the highway up to, now a bunch of traffic kind of being diverted? So I'm just asking the question, not to confuse it, just to make sure we know that at least there's a proposal to close that street. And does this rearrangement negatively or positively affect that? I don't know. I'd like to ask the question.
Well, it was within that context that these recommendations came forward. Having said that, I might just make these even if that road was not closed, because I think they're good recommendations. However, it was within this context.
Okay, sounds good. I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Councilmember Winning.
Oh, I didn't push my button, but I'll be happy to speak.
Okay, please do.
Just a question. From my understanding was that as you go up 7th, head north on 7th, and you come to the T there, that the section to the right, to the right there, is going to be vacated and shut down for the duration. But we've got that 8-hour parking segment on the air portion of that road that I thought was going to be shut off. Should that be adjusted?
It will be, because it will be closed off. That nevertheless was on version 1 point that we passed in the first reading, and I didn't feel as if if I remove that, you might take that as a modification that I was making. But yes, since it's going to be closed, there can be no parking in there. I didn't remove it because, again, I'm not modifying it.
Yeah, I would just suggest that we do remove it.
Okay.
A direct draft to remove it.
Dan, let me ask you, is there a reason that that's included in first reading?
Mr. Mayor, that was included because that is what the code currently reads as. That's what was approved at first reading. If council requests that be changed, we can do that. The only caveat that I would have is that the closure of 7th is, from what I understand, is a one-year pilot project. So if this is removed and 7th is reopened next year, that would be unlimited timed parking. So we would either need to bring that back before council if you desire to reinstate it at 8 hours or leave it at that.
So per his explanation there, I would think we should leave it in. Because if the pilot doesn't prove out, then we go back to this as a default.
I guess I'm okay with that. If we can, if the pilot doesn't prove, then maybe a year from now we can take it out.
Otherwise, no one can park here because cars just aren't allowed. Correct?
That's correct. That section of the road would be closed with the pilot. So while it would be in code for 8-hour parking, vehicles wouldn't have an opportunity to get there.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, amendment passes. Is there any further discussion or any further amendments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to final passage. All those in favor of the motion as amended on second reading indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, this requires a voice vote. A roll call.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor King?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilliam?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitting?
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr?
Aye.
Councilmember Adler?
Nay.
Mayor Castema?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to 5B, second reading of an ordinance for the formation of a transportation benefit district. And let's see, do we need, is Talika here, or who would like to give a briefing or presentation?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No formal presentation other than to say this is the second reading of the ordinance. At the last meeting, you approved first reading. Just to remind the council, this is the formation of the Transportation Benefit District. That's what this vote is. And then if this is approved at second reading, then at the next meeting, which will be next week, a resolution will come back. You'll be acting in the capacity of the board, the Transportation Benefit Board, and then in that capacity deciding what the funding is. At this point, the recommendation is the 1/10 of 1% sales tax. So that would come in your capacity as the board next week. So for tonight, all you're doing is, not all you're doing, it's important, but you're approving second reading of creating the Transportation Benefit District.
Okay, just curious, on the funding aspect, will that just require public hearings? What's the extent of it?
No, so there's already been the public hearing on this earlier, 2 or 3 meetings ago, or 2 meetings ago, I think. So you've already had a public hearing on it.
And will it require a first and second reading or not?
Nope, it's just a resolution.
Okay, thank you. So with that, could I get a motion to put this before us for a second reading?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Let's go ahead and have a roll call on this, please.
Deputy Mayor King?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilliam?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitting?
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr?
I believe she said aye. Am I correct?
Aye.
Yes.
Councilmember Adler?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Castema?
Aye. So let's move on to number 6 on the agenda, considerations and requests. This is an interlocal agreement with Milton regarding municipal court services. City Manager Steve Kirkley, please apprise us of this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. This matter before you tonight is requesting a motion to approve an amended interlocal agreement just with the City of Milton. Just as a background, many local governments engage in interlocal agreements with other local governments to provide essential services. So you often see that, for instance, some cities have the Sheriff's Department provide services. There are instances where a jail city may contract out with another city for jail. Another area that is very common is municipal courts. And so back in 2012, the City of Puyallup and Milton entered into an interlocal agreement where we would provide municipal court services to the City of Milton. So the interlocal and the relationship has been around for several years. What is before you tonight is an amendment to that existing interlocal agreement. There's really 3 main components. And I do want to just back up really quick just to provide a little bit more background. So we have our own municipal court. Milton has a municipal court. We provide all the services to Milton Municipal Court. The only thing that they don't provide is they have their own judge. So it's Judge Allen. Other than that, our court clerks, our court administrator, Ellen Atterbury, is here today, this evening. All of the court security, everything else is provided by the City of Puyallup. We charge Milton for that. And so they pay costs plus administrative fees. So this is the arrangement that's been going on for well over a decade. They want to add a few components. First of all, prosecution costs have gone up. That is a pass-through that we pass through to Milton, so that's reflected in the new interlocal agreement. We've also updated some electronic processing file fees with Milton, so we're passing through that cost to them, their proportionate share of those costs. And then they are going to be adding photo enforcement up in Milton. We have nothing to do with that. However, since we do provide court services, we have to process those parking tickets is what they are. So based on that, our estimate is we would need an additional court clerk. So the interlocal would add a court clerk. It would be a City of Puyallup employee, but it'd be 100% paid by Milton. So that is the third provision. The City of Milton's already approved this, their City Council, so it's before you this evening to authorize approval of the interlocal agreement. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Are there any questions, first of all? Is there a motion to approve this interlocal agreement?
I make a motion.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion at all? Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, I support this, but I guess I'd like to just make sure I address questions before we have to back up. Let's just say hypothetically, and I don't see this happening, but just using a hypothetical scenario, let's say that they're funding this 100% city employee that we're kind of obligated to pay as an employee with benefits and all the retirement and things that we do with that in some nature. But let's say the City of Milton decides they don't want to fund this anymore. They've got some other options. Are we then obligated to maintain this employee, or could that employee be released if, in fact, so we're not kind of on the hook to have to continue to pay and fill them in somewhere else? I just want to ask the question.
Very fair question. So the agreement has a provision that they have to maintain this for at least 3 years. After that 3-year term, they have to give us 6 months' notice. If they give us 6 months' notice that they want to end it, then the reality is we'd lay this employee off.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, we'll now go to a vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, now we will move on to number 7 on other business. This is the 2044 overview of the comprehensive plan, periodic update. Senior Planner Kendall Walls, if you want to come forward and give a presentation, please do.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Kendall Walls with the Planning Division. And we are back again to talk about the comprehensive plan and give an overview, high-level overview of the updates kind of throughout the comp plan. We don't have specific policy questions for you tonight, but we're getting ready to issue the final draft for public review next week, so we wanted to just give you an overview to keep you informed as part of the process. So I'll start off with just a brief project status update. Then we'll walk through kind of key updates for each of the different elements, and then briefly touch on next steps. So I think you all are aware that we're kind of at the final stages of this process, and we're at the end of this timeline that we've kind of worked through over time. And as I mentioned, we're getting ready to issue that draft comprehensive plan. We have a survey going right now, and we'll be issuing a final environmental impact statement soon, and then we'll take final recommendations from the Planning Commission back to Council early next year. So to kind of walk through the high-level updates by element, we'll first start with kind of just common updates that we identified early on that we wanted to do as part of this process, and then majority of these are shown in blue as required updates. So some of these may have touched a couple of elements or all of the elements, but we kind of just wanted to put it up here so we weren't being too repetitive throughout the presentation. So first one is streamline and simplify elements and policies wherever possible. That was a big mission that Council kind of endorsed when we started this process of just trying to make it user-friendly and kind of reduce some of the robustness of some of our elements and policies. So that was a big part of the project. We also, as part of the requirements, needed to review and revise policies as needed to support environmental justice. We also needed to make sure that our policies looked at preventing or mitigating residential and commercial displacement. That really kind of came up more in our housing element and sub-area plans, but that was something that we looked at. Adjusting policy language where needed to be less subjective and be more inclusive. So really kind of telling the public what we mean when we say character, and then making sure that the terms that we're using throughout the comprehensive plan are being inclusive of our entire community. And then the last is ensuring ensure that our policies regarding public engagement are inclusive, including inclusive outreach. That's something that we always strive for, but being more specific in our policies that we're doing inclusive outreach. Specific to the land use element, this one in particular, we did a lot of work on to try and streamline and simplify. For example, this element had 36 goals with policies underneath each of those, and we worked really hard to get that down to half. So we have 18 goals and policies underneath there to kind of really provide a more clear vision and direction moving forward. We also have been before you talking about an updated land use map based on our preferred alternative that was studied as part of the environmental analysis. And I just wanted to note, since there was some public comment related to some of the changes that are proposed on that draft map, that we have received public comment with some concerns related to that moderate density residential designation proposed around the hospital area, and we are already looking at some potential options there. So we'll be presenting probably an alternative option to the Planning Commission, so you can expect some potential changes there when it comes to you. We're also needing to update our policies to accommodate our growth targets, both housing and employment, and policy modifications are required to allow a wider range of residential densities. This was also something that was identified in our housing action plan, so making those changes, and increasing allowed densities in our high density areas, and carrying forward our existing policies related to neighborhood serving commercial. That's already been something, a part of the comprehensive plan. I know we've talked a lot about it with you, council, more recently related to map amendments. And we see that as kind of implementing our existing policy on the draft future land use map. So putting that a little more into action. For the housing element, as you're aware, this was kind of the big area for changes, at least from the state requirements. So there were a number of required changes that we needed to address in the periodic update. There's a few different ways that we needed to address housing, addressing housing needs for all income levels, income segments, specific requirements related to moderate, low, and extremely low income households. We also needed to ensure that we have adequate land capacity to support housing for those different income bands, as well as emergency housing, shelters, permanent supportive housing, and transitional housing. We also updated policy as needed to remove any potential for neighborhood inequality and barriers to access. So taking a look at those policies and expanding on existing policy related to moderate density housing, for middle housing, accessory dwelling units. I know we've talked a lot about that. We already had existing policy, but just expanding on what we had to address both the housing action plan and the requirements from the state to allow for more greater housing choices throughout our residential neighborhoods. And then also we added in some policy support to explore some potential opportunities to streamline residential permitting to help minimize that cost, production cost, and hopefully create some more affordable homeownership options that way. The community character element, this is not a required element, but a lot of our kind of design and historic nature policies are in this element. And some policy changes were made to kind of move away from terms like character and be more direct on what we mean by character. Is it bulk and scale, that type of thing. But also making sure that those policies aren't promoting any potential neighborhood exclusion or inhibiting housing choices and variety. So that also touches on the middle housing regulations that we're having to implement. The community character element also included some related to cultural and archaeological sites. So having support for preservation of those in addition to our historical sites. We already have policy related to those. And also strengthening policies around tribal coordination for cultural preservation. For the economic development element, we made sure to we wanted to ensure that PSRC's center guidance for our 2 regional growth centers were being met. We also maintained a lot of our existing policies, but did a little bit more of a reorganization of some, providing a focus on workforce development, infrastructure investments, and our centers and business districts. And we also expanded some policy support for improvements to our permitting process. For the transportation element, this was another one that received a lot of updates to the element text as well as policies. Many of the concepts were carried forward, but reorganized and simplified and used more current terms and standards. There's also requirements to kind of focus on all needs for the transportation system, all the users of that system, whether It's biking, walking, rolling, transit, or single occupancy driving, and making sure that the build out of that system is safe and equitable. Strengthening our grid connectivity planning as well to minimize transportation impacts, have a more resilient system, and advancing our environmental goals, as well as prioritizing a state of good repair to maintain our existing system. The natural environment element received some additional consolidation and streamlining of the existing goals and policies. We did some updates to our data, our GIS data related to wetlands and streams to make that more current. And as an action item for the comprehensive plan, we'll be required to take a look at our critical areas ordinance. So that will be something that we'll look at next year. So that's called out in that element as an action plan or an action item. Our capital facilities and utilities elements didn't receive major changes. They were being updated to align with the more recent changes to the land use and other elements. We also have some policy in there in coordination with our private utility providers and just consistency with the regional planning policies. For the parks, recreation, and open space element, there also were not major policy changes proposed for this one, but the element itself will look quite different. The plan, the existing, we have an element and a plan. The element is very outdated. It wasn't updated in the last update of the PROS plan. So the PROS plan was adopted in 2020, and we just wanted to clean up and make sure that we're referencing that current document. And there's a couple minor changes to policies to use terms that are consistent throughout the comprehensive plan, but are not taking away with the intent of those policies. The PROS plan itself will receive an update on its regular cycle in 2026. So for the downtown and South Hill neighborhood plans, again, those are our two regional growth centers. They have their own neighborhood plan, which are two separate elements in our comprehensive plan. Each needed similar updates to bring it into conformance with PSRC's requirements for our regional growth centers. So recognizing the role that these centers play in achieving the Vision 2050 goal of attracting growth and employment in those areas, as well as the role that they use for land use development and transportation on greenhouse gas emissions, prioritizing services and access to opportunities for historically underserved communities in those regional growth centers as well, and identifying a transportation mode split goal was a new requirement. And then we had some key updates for each individual element. For downtown, some policy changes to allow some increased building height by right without needing a height bonus to help support development downtown. Also, policies to address pedestrian-oriented development areas along Meridian and major pedestrian connections, as well as policies to help guide development in between the downtown area and the fairgrounds, since that is kind of the end of southern end of the regional growth center, and how does that interface with the fairgrounds. And then as part of more recent legislative changes, we will need to take a look at our downtown design standards to ensure that they're clear and objective standards for review. So that is an action item that we'll need to take a look at following the comprehensive plan update. And then for South Hill, adding policies to facilitate the gradual transition of growth in the city to a more walkable mixed-use district. So taking a look at establishing code for some more allowances for interim development that will not hinder the vision for the neighborhood plan, but still allow for some changes. And then also looking at policies to allow for standalone residential within the South Hill Regional Growth Center in specific areas that are less of a priority for commercial to help increase residential in the South Hill neighborhood plan. The River Road Corridor Plan, when we started the process, we had identified this area as one that we could potentially apply for countywide, countywide growth center status. So that could make the city more eligible for grants. And there are certain things that are needed to be added. So we looked at it as kind of being a primer, making those minor changes to kind of set the stage for us to apply for the countywide center status. We also recently spoke to council about auto dealership uses in this area, specifically the mixed use area RMX on the north side of River Road. And the direction from council at that October study session was to look at making a code change to allow those uses. We did take a look at our existing policies in the plan, and there is some language in there that would allow us to do limited auto dealership uses in that RMX area. So we are putting that as to do for next year with our code changes. However, we think that for it to be more of like an auto sales lot in that area, it doesn't quite fit the existing vision within the plan. So we have included and are recommending an action item that we reevaluate the corridor plan and do some more outreach, kind of look at the policies as a whole before making those changes. So that is being included as an action item to the River Road Corridor Plan. So next steps, I kind of touched on this earlier. We have a survey going right now. Next Wednesday is a big day for the comp plan. We'll be releasing the draft plan for public review. We also have a public open house scheduled from 4:30 to 6:30. It'll be in the lobby and in council chambers. There will be a presentation at 5:15, followed by a planning commission work session at 6:30. And then December 11th, we'll hold the planning commission public hearing. And then the following week on the 18th, the planning commission will do their deliberation and make a formal recommendation to council. And then we will bring that forward to council early next year for your public hearing and final adoption process. And that's all I have.
Councilmember Johnson, and may I remind all the members here and all the people who are viewing this or in the audience, this is a draft. That's the council is the final decision maker on this, and we anticipate that it will be modified significantly before it's done. That's what my anticipation is, and so keep that in mind. That on the release date next week, what's the date on that? The
20th. The
20th will be a draft. And I agree with many of the concerns that have been brought up about it having absolute adverse impacts on single-family neighborhoods in this community to the point of just doing away with them entirely. And I believe that as a result, we will minimize the opportunities for home ownership, and we will, in fact, turn more and more of our single-family neighborhoods into nothing but rentals. And I sincerely believe that, and there are so many adverse things that have been mandated by the state legislature that we're going to noodle through And just keep in mind, there's a lot of work to be done on this. That whatever is in this document, I'd like the public to be able to read it, express their thoughts, and then it'll be us on the dais here, all 7 of us, who will be ultimately responsible for what happens. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you reminding our constituents that that's the buck stops here collectively. And that's wonderful. It's the way it should be. I mean, folks elect us collectively to make decisions, and we appreciate all the work that's done by, staff and the Planning Commission, but ultimately we're responsible. And so I'm glad that we recognize that authority that's been given to us collectively by the people to look out for their interests. I guess along that line, I am just a little bit, I won't say concerned, but I mean, the intensity of this comprehensive plan, Kendall, well, first of all, let me back up a little bit. Thanks for all your work. What an amazing work with Katie and Kendall and all the staff, really playing into this. I know it wasn't just the 2 of you that did it. There's a lot of staff really feeding into this, doing research, talking to stakeholders. Wow, it's a tremendous amount of work. So thank you for that. And thank you not only for that, but thank you for your ability to stay objective and not get sucked into the passion from council members, from constituents, and who all have this, various feelings about this. You're able to listen to us, filter that, not take it personal, and try to interpret that into, a good outcome. So really wonderful job doing that, and a professional job doing that. And so I just want to say thank you for that. That's noticed by me and many others. So thank you for that. With that in mind, Council, this is something we do every 10 years. And this is significant for the rollout of our community, what this is going to look like in terms of zoning. And I guess the Planning Commission plays a role in that. I mean, we appoint people from our community to serve in that capacity. And I guess I'm just a little bit caught off guard that, as significant as a 10-year comprehensive plan, unless I'm reading this right, this is only going to come before them 2 times. The Planning Commission is only going to see this on December 11th for the first time, and then the 18th, or have they been seeing it all along, and this is a final draft coming to them for final deliberation?
Correct. They've been working on it for a very long time.
Wonderful. I hope so.
This is their final work session.
Yeah, because I'd be thinking, holy smokes, how are they going to go through all this in 2 sessions? So this has been a labor of their work and love and input and with staff. And at this point, it comes to the head where they're going to really make some decisions, it sounds like. Okay.
Yep, they will be making their formal recommendation to council.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. That's good to clear that up. So the other thing is there anything and again, not to go into the weeds too much, but we talked about affordable housing. Is there anything in this provision, and again, I haven't looked into the details yet, only in just little high-profile glances, but is there anything to talk about allowances for permitting or allowable uses within the proper, guidelines for either row housing or cottage housing or tiny houses or things along that line that would allow perhaps development that would fit kind of that size or micro housing?
I don't know if it specifically calls out micro housing, but I think some of the options that you were mentioning would fall within that middle housing category. Row housing, townhomes, I think would be kind of similar to that. So they are addressed in that capacity.
It's my hope, and again, I'm not proposing that we move forward, but as long as we're in this draft and we're kind of looking over the whole thing, if this is like a once in 10-year kind of major study, I think there are I'd sure like to see some deliberation by staff and Planning Commission for some allowances for tiny homes that would be similar to ADUs. I'll give you an example of why. And again, our first blush would, we have tiny homes everywhere. It would be cluttered, bunch of matchbox cars. I kind of get that. But I think if there were very strict guidelines of allowances where this might work, if you're talking about affordable housing and homeownership versus renting, This could provide some allowances with zoning opportunities for that, for people who want to have home ownership and buy into our city. So I'll give you an example. There are many children who are raised in Puyallup who would love to live in Puyallup now that they've grown up and they're in college and they're single and they have all these memories here, but they can't afford to buy a house here because maybe they can't spend $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 on a house, but they kind of want to live in the town that they were raised in. And there's maybe rental options for them, but is there any buying options for them? So, for example, I was looking at, I'm not talking about motorhomes, I'm not talking about metal trailers like a mobile home. I'm talking about stick-built that would be up to same codes as an ADU, but it's prefabbed, wooden structure, wooden walls, tiny homes that are maybe 500, 600, 700 square feet, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. You would actually put in plumbing that could actually be wheeled in to a perhaps zoning designated area within our city. Again, it met some really strict criteria, so that we wouldn't, as some folks would echo, turn all of our residentials into spotted tiny houses. But if there were certain ones that could be identified and zoned responsibly without messing up the character of the area, you could actually theoretically roll into a prefab small entry-level home that a person could buy with a small plot of land, a subdividable land on a larger property. They could theoretically get into this for probably $120,000 for a starter home for their maybe first as an individual, and then they sell that and maybe move into something else. So not a rental, but actually something they could purchase. And so I've been talking a little bit about this with former Deputy Mayor Whitting, but now Councilmember Whitting. And I think some of the key would be is if there were lots that were large enough that didn't have adverse reaction. I'm not talking about necessarily in District 1 where most of the lots are sliver, teeny lots. There's some challenges there. But there's some areas within Puyallup that have some very large lots, an acre, 3/4 of an acre, where there's plenty of land, where you might be able to find allowances where a certain portion of that could be subdivided off, so you could chop that and turn it into its own tax parcel. You could bring in a tiny home, micro home, into a residential area and have some, again, home ownership. I'm not talking about duplicating rentals, but something that can be purchased. So anyway, all that being said, I hope that there's at least some discussion. Is there an appropriate place in the city of Puyallup for folks that want to live here that maybe can't afford $600,000, but maybe can afford $125,000 or $150,000, that would be homeowners, not renters, and not folks that just want to kind of hang out, but want to start with a small piece of pie and then sell and rebuy somewhere else. That's my hope, is there's some discussion or options for that while we have this kind of wet cement of the comprehensive plan to discuss, and then council might approve it, might find a compromise, or might throw it out. I don't know, but I just would hate to ignore it just because it's such an important potential for people who may want to have a piece of the pie.
I can take a look at the policies and also make sure that there's nothing existing in the draft, that we've already covered that. But we'll take a look at it and we can provide it as an alternative option for the Planning Commission to consider.
Okay, great. And then just to follow up on that, and thanks, Council, for letting me expound a little bit, because I'm pretty passionate about this. I think there's really something here. If we really want affordable housing and we really want to have home ownership, could be a really neat piece if it's done responsibly. That's a caveat, right? But I know we have some provisions for ADUs, right? And the ADUs are a little bit different because that all stays on the same parcel. So it's almost like having another rental on your property. There's no separate home ownership. You put an ADU, you build this micro house on there, and so it'd be pretty hard to sell, wouldn't it, if it's all on one parcel?
Well, I think with the new state regulations, we have to change that so that they can be subdivided and owned separately.
So I'd like more information on that, because that really intrigues me, that you can actually separate the land and actually parse that out for someone to purchase. Mm-hmm. Now, again, the intent of this would be not to double our rental income. That would not be the intent. Would be to expand home ownership at an entry level for folks who may want to buy a sliver on lots that make sense, and not on lots that obviously were never intended for that because they're so crowded together. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Whitting.
Thank you. And Kendall and company. I really want to express my appreciation for all the work that's gone into where we are tonight. And I recognize the amount of effort that was required by some of the recent state legislation. There's a lot there, and it really changes the complexion of our city. To a certain extent, it's kind of a blunt instrument, more than kind of, as it stands. As a city council, I would hope that we could use a scalpel instead of a hammer on some of these things. But this is a challenge that because of the state legislation, this is a challenge for all of our sister cities and throughout the state. And I serve on the South Sound Housing Affordability Partners Board, and they've heard our concerns about some of these changes and are working on some things. And some of the issues they've discussed. Hang on just a second, my screen closed up on me. Some of the things they're working on is universal design principles, unit lot subdivision, condominiumization of properties, density bonuses for properties of religious organizations, and a housing toolkit recommendations and implementation. I think some of the work that they're doing could be very helpful to us as we shape the final draft of this plan. And I think, as I understand it, the direction that we received from House Bill 1110 and some of the other legislation that's recently passed, that some of that we can replace with a local option if it meets the goals of the legislation. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
If we meet the goals of the HB 1110, we don't have to comply with the exact quarter-mile boundary circle kind of thing. We can substitute something of our own that meets those goals.
I don't know that it's that fluid. There are certain parameters that we would be required to meet, but we do have some ability to change certain aspects of it.
Yeah,
if that answers your question.
Let's look into that a little more fully. I've understood that there's maybe a little more flexibility than I previously recognized on some of the things we can do here, and I'd like to suggest that we look at some of the areas where transit is close by. That's one of the intent is to foster transit-oriented development, and one area that I'd like to particularly focus on is the area down near South Hill that's right by close by to the Park and Ride and also the transit center at South Hill Mall, and that's the corridor between 31st Avenue and Highway 512. There's a lot of large lots there that have not been developed yet, and I think there's the opportunity to create a corridor there that could have bike lanes and multi-use lanes there that would feed people into the mall, into the transit centers, and really encourage a lot of foot traffic and bike traffic, and really create a really nice community there, and allow fee simple row houses or other kinds of development there that would bring down the costs of our property somewhat. If left alone, I think a lot of that will develop as similar to a lot of the other communities we have in town, that with small lots and big homes and not much affordability. I'd like to see multifamily, more dense development and more affordable, but primarily more affordable development. with that in mind, I would like to suggest that we bring SHAPE in as at a study session to talk about some of the work that they're doing and see if we can't see if we think that's appropriate for Puyallup and our citizens. Thank you.
Any further comments? Well, I think I've made my perspective very well known to this community that I think the state legislature overstepped its bounds tremendously. In fact, they overstepped their bounds and they usurped 134 years of precedent where local jurisdictions were the ones that made these decisions and not the state legislature. But the state legislature has actually, the chair in the House has come out saying that she thinks that frankly, city council members don't know anything, and her quote is very appalling. Her opinion of our local city councils is extremely low in our ability to make good, intelligent decisions, and the state has decided that they will usurp our decision-making and how we go ahead and hit our targets, down to the point where now they will say that on every lot in Puyallup you can build duplexes throughout the entire city. You can put 2 ADUs, and they can be rental units. The entire 3 can be rental units. 4plexes are throughout the city, as long as one of them is, quote, affordable. And then in the downtown area, we just passed a parking regulation, and they've said that within a half mile of our downtown area, no parking requirements whatsoever. So think about that. Where a single-family home is right now, that home can end up having 4 units on it, and that's going to have 2 to 8 cars will be parked on the street in front of where there currently is 1 house. It is it's devastating what will happen, and here's the absolute kicker to it, and people in Puyallup need to know this, is this bill would not have passed the state legislature, would not, if they had not exempted the wealthiest neighborhoods in this state. All HOAs, all those gated communities, any place that has an HOA were exempt. Not only were they exempt, but they were given 3 months before this bill went into place to pass provisions that prevented all of this from happening to them. Because the wealthy people in this community, the wealthy communities, understand this will severely impact the character of their neighborhood. But for us hardworking people who live in downtown neighborhoods, no problem. Or we can have just insane parking situations. Again, we were very methodical how we went through those parking requirements here before we put them forward. But then they just mandate that, again, 4 to 8 cars will be in front of every home parked on the street. Imagine that through your neighborhoods. You know, and what the state legislature also did is they have never dealt with the issue of another method of affordable housing that is available in other countries, other states, but not available in Washington State, and that is condominiums. The condominium law in Washington State is so litigious. The trial lawyers, well, I don't need you to call out there like, this is not a sermon, but it almost is. But the fact of the matter is the condominium laws are such that trial lawyers are predatory towards condominiums, and developers tell me they won't build them because they are guaranteed to be sued. And the insurance that they need to get to provide these condominiums is just cost prohibitive. They would rather not do it. So what's the net result? The net result in a lot of their policies here is we turn single-family residential neighborhoods. We don't have the condominium. We could have micro condos, things of that sort, where people own them, but they turn everyone into renters. And that's what just absolutely appalls me. And I will tell you this on all the regulations coming forward. I went to the state legislature in mid-1990s. Growth management had just finished being implemented, and it was a model that was other states across the United States followed what we did in Washington State. And that was this. The state would identify targets, the numbers of what you had to hit. But at that point, they left it up to local jurisdiction to decide how they would do it. And across the United States, when people tried to implement Growth Management Act, they copied Washington State because it gave the autonomy to us fully intelligent, cognizant stakeholders in our community to come up with how we would do it. And again, with House Bill 1110, they went ahead and usurped that, and the word is they're coming back this next legislative session with even more mandates that they're going to mandate on people in our community. Fact of the matter is, we know how to develop in this town. We hopefully will have two very large multifamily developments going in here within the next year or so. We have one going on now down near Grayland Park. We have lots of vacant lots on main arterials where we have the infrastructure. We have the ability to accommodate. We realize that. We want that kind of development. We want home ownership. But frankly, I think a lot of these ideas will fracture our neighborhoods. I'm just letting you know what's coming down the pike. It won't happen in 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, but over 20 years, your neighborhoods will be transformed, cars parked, again, without people taking responsibility of providing their own parking place in their own residence. So, again, I'm going to emphasize this is a draft. This, council members, you're going to all be empowered to look at this thing and make changes that you think are appropriate, and we'll go toe-to-toe and we'll debate those. But by golly, I think we deserve the same deference that wealthy communities do, that communities under 20,000 like Medina or Edgewood or Gig Harbor or other areas, again, that are wealthy don't have to deal with any of these requirements. We do in the city of Puyallup. I think that's unfair. And in Puyallup, we've always said that every neighborhood is the same. Everybody gets treated the same in this community. There's no safe place. There's no unsafe. There's no good. There's no bad. Every place in Puyallup is a desirable place to live. And this bill makes us go back on that promise. And I tell you, I'm going to fight it. And I'm going to look at this bill, and I'm going to try and craft something and bring it before you, and I wish you to do the same, that better matches what we have planned here in Puyallup. Council Member Johnson, do you have a retort to my comments?
Well, first of all, Mr. Mayor, thank you for your passion, for your spunk, for your fight, for your words. And it's my hope that I want you to know that if I ever really disagree with you, I'll keep my vocals self-controlled. But when I'm for you, I want to say hear, hear. So please don't squash me too much. I want to cheer you on, right? So I love what you're doing, and I think it's fantastic. And I think the city of Puyallup constituents deserve that spunk and fight from all of us to kind of deal with the hand that's been dealt us, right? But I want to go back to touching a little bit, we talk about, I want to remind the council, some of these developments that we're talking about, multifamily housing and some of the projects that we're looking at perhaps in the future. I want to remind us that we have a lot of multifamily housing all the way up and down Meridian. And guess what? Every single one of them are all rentals. They're all apartments. So I hope that as we're looking at high density housing in our downtown core, we're just going to duplicate with more apartments and somehow think that we're any better than we were before. I hope that if we really believe that home ownership is important, that we're not compromising and adding to more rentals, because it goes back to, and again, I know it sounds, but we're kind of visual people, right? And we remember. But and there's some elements of truth to this, and I think that we forget. There's a principle, but when you watch the movie It's a Wonderful Life, and you look at Pottersville and landlords that continue, they're wealthy and they buy up these properties and they build rentals, and they are in a sense, landlords that are collecting money, and these average folks never get a chance to get ahead. But the mom and pop guys in the savings and loan are trying to build simple housing that people can buy. I hope that we as a council are fighting for homeownership, increase in affordable homeownership, and not just affordable housing that provides rents, so that we can end up being like other cities who have lots of housing, but there's no skin in the game because they're all, in some sense, a tremendous amount of rental constituents. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But remember, council, and I think sometimes we need to tap ourselves on the shoulder as we're making decisions on intensity of growth. again, I think we need to, it should be really glued on the back of our dais here. As I understand correctly, roughly, maybe not scientifically, maybe a percent off, but we're what, 48% of our homes in Puyallup are rentals and 52 are home ownership. And you look at other jurisdictions and they're much higher home ownership. So why are we proportionally have more rentals than we do in terms of home ownership? That is a very telling sign. So whereas we're making, kind of high density and we're compromising by putting in more apartments, even though they're fancier apartments, we're really not spreading that gap of home ownership. Can someone tell me, I think, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, with permission, just to answer my data, I think somebody on this dais knows, what's the data for Pierce County? I think, Councilor Wedding, do you know that?
Yeah, the home ownership percentage for Puyallup is 52%. The home ownership percentage for Pierce County is 62%.
62% in unincorporated Pierce County of home ownership, but here we are in Puyallup with only 48 or 52% home ownership, 48 rentals. That's a problem, and that's what I've been saying all along. I'm a little bit of a soapbox, Mr. Mayor, but it kind of ties in with you. I'm for you. I'm with you. But we have to fight for proper kind of housing, affordable home ownership. We have to fight for that. Otherwise, it's going to by default, by state legislature, we're going to just build more housing. They'll all be rentals. We have to fight for that, and I think that's huge. And so I hope that we keep that in the back of our mind, that we really want to provide folks that were raised here and now have grown up, who are maybe young adults or young marrieds, and they want to buy here. We have to provide some housing that they can buy a piece of the pie here and be able to live here and kind of build equity and then move into a more expensive home as time goes along. So anyway, I'm with you, Mr. Mayor. I'm with you. I support you, and let's fight for our town. Thank you.
Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. I'd also like to go on record stating that I'm in support of learning more information so that we can provide for our city what is necessary. But I also would like to ask, how likely is it that 2 to 3 houses would be built on a lot in Puyallup? Like, do we already have existing codes that says, I'm sorry, this is too small to put 2 to 3 more houses on it? Or where would this growth take place? How does that shape things for us?
So we do have zoning regulations that have to be met for a new development or redevelopment of an existing structure. There are bulk and scale standards like setbacks, lot coverage, as well as floor area ratio, which looks at the square footage by floor instead of just an overview of the lot coverage by the structure on the lot. So there are provisions in place, and those will be things that we'll also look at through the code update that limit the developability of a site. We know there are parameters that they have to meet, so by allowing a certain number of units per lot, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're achievable, because they still have to meet the remainder of our code standards.
That's very good to know.
That's a good question. We'd like to know more about that.
Okay.
So again, folks, since there's any further questions, Councilmember Whitting, do you have a comment?
Yes, I do. I'm taking my second shot here, and I apologize for taking a double dip, but this is something I've heard a lot of passion from my colleagues. I tend to display less passion, but this is a subject that I am indeed very passionate about. So I want to express that passion, and at the same time, I want to underline the need. We've talked a lot about home ownership, and I think that's a worthy goal, and I want to get Puyallup up to that 62%. But we need to have affordable housing that for people that don't have a down payment yet too. So we can't ignore we need to have the rental property. It seems like we've got a lot, but a lot of it isn't very affordable. My daughter's trying to move out of the house, and it's hard to get first and last month's rent and be able to pay the monthly rent on top of it. So housing is expensive, and we've got to encourage development that in my opinion, is smaller. Everybody doesn't need a 3,000 square foot home or a 1,500 square foot apartment. Let's go with the smaller units, and then we don't have to subsidize them to make them affordable. Their small size makes them affordable, and people can afford them because they're not a $400,000 or $400,000 home. As Councilmember Johnson said, let's see if we can't generate some homes that are considerably less expensive, apartments where the rentals are considerably less expensive. And I know that's a easy thing to say and a hard thing to do, but we've got the authority to do some good things, multifamily tax exemptions and density bonuses, et cetera, et cetera. We need to take every tool we've got at our disposal and work to make housing affordable for our citizens. Thank you.
Councilmember Whitting, just to apprise you of the fact that because the state doesn't impose this on HOAs doesn't mean we don't have to. I mean, in other words, if we decide we want to impose all these requirements on HOAs, we can do that in our community. So, if you want to expand that and you want these to be used everywhere to expand that opportunity, keep in mind that's an option. We could, in fact, do that. Again, our motto is we are all treated the same in this community. Yep. No neighborhood is off limits. So I may expect to see something like that from you.
Can I respond, Mayor?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, be assured that my intention here is not to change the character of existing neighborhoods any more than necessary. We want to preserve the character, and again, my recommendation for the corridor between 512 and 31 is it's undeveloped, and it's largely undeveloped, and it gives us the opportunity to start with fresh ground and build new communities that are more affordable without changing the character of the existing neighborhoods and taking somebody's house that's lived there for 30 years and all of a sudden they've got a skyscraper sitting next door to them. That's not my intent at all. It's quite the opposite. Thank you.
Understand. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's lots to unpack regarding all of the housing discussion, and this is something that I have been thinking about a lot ever since I became a member of the council. And frankly, the information that I have learned over these past 3 years is very disturbing, to say the least. The House bill that we're discussing here tonight is unfortunate, and the fact of the matter is that we can talk about affordable housing here in Puyallup all we want. We can have our wishes, we can have our hopes. The fact of the matter is this is something that I know a little bit about, and frankly, the dirt here in Puyallup is too high for any consideration to really consider the thought or wish of affordable housing. And that's the hard thing that we all have to understand. And it's just not here in Puyallup. It's almost this entire state. The development costs, not just in our city, but in other cities, are too high, including for those that are wanting to do duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, all of the multifamily type homes. This House bill is designed to encourage more apartment living, whether people realize it or not. They do not want to incentivize homeownership. They want to incentivize more renters. And not many people will come out and say that, but there has to be some sort of condominium reform at the state level and bring back more condo buildings to relieve some of the liabilities that come with it. That is the only way you will have affordable housing in this state ever again. And no one will say it. And it's very, very disturbing that we consider multifamily as duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, when in reality we need to do the right thing, going back to the state level, and reform condominium buildings. That's the only way we will ever have affordable housing in this state and in this nation ever again. And it's easy to say, and it's nearly impossible to fix. That's the unforeseen truth. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Well, the starting gun starts when we get the draft, and we've got till when do you expect to have this before the council for us to put forward our amendments? I mean, when do you, the timeline wise, are we looking at March before this passes?
We're planning to come to you in January, and we anticipate final adoption by March, just with ordinance reading processes.
Okay, but we will see this product, their final draft, on the 20th.
It will be issued. Planning Commission could potentially make different recommendation, like from the draft, they could impose some recommended modifications to that, and that's what we would be bringing to you in January. Assuming they make no recommended changes to that, that would be the draft that would come to you.
So we have a couple months to work on it from the draft, but I would say let's start as soon as possible. Okay, with that, if there's no further comments, let's move on. Thank you very much for that. Let's move on to the city manager's report.
Yes, good evening. We have you have an executive session tonight, Mr. Mayor, and for next week's council meeting, the primary focus will be on the first reading of the budget ordinances, along with the resolution for the Transportation Benefit District, which you will be acting in your capacity as the Board of Directors. The Library Teen Zone matter will be coming back. As you recall, that went out for bid. The bids came in higher than what we had anticipated. And so we paused and put the bids back out, and they've come in lower. And so we'll bring that to you for formal approval. And then also there's a historic preservation tax exemption request for a property that will be before you. And there may be another couple items added, but at this point, those are the main items.
Okay, excellent. Let's go ahead and go to City Council reports. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No report.
Okay, Councilmember Dorr, is she still online?
No, she's logged off.
Okay. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. I'm just going to reiterate what some of our constituents brought before us tonight during citizen comment, and that is Thanksgiving Gobble Gobble 5 and 10K on November 28th through All Things Fun Sports. Make sure you register, and they take you walking, jogging, running, whatever you want to do. With baby strollers, I'm sure they'd let you bring your dog. Okay, I can't speak on behalf of that, but show up and have some fun. Also, December 7th is our amazing Santa Parade, but we also have the holiday market noon to 7, and then the Santa Parade is from 6. I'm sorry, I want to make sure I'm saying it right. 6 to 7? 5 to 6. Thank you. Thank you very much. 5 to 6 p.m. So please come out and support Puyallup. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great debate tonight, and great discussions and great passion. I think that I'm reminded once again tonight how how much our town really cares about this town because we're passionate and we like to speak about it. And but I marvel, I just really marvel at, in a wonderful way, sometimes passion unchecked can get a little bit, unruly and out of order. And there's something about having passion with self-control and decorum and respect that makes it go better. And I think the council and our constituents have done a very fine job in setting the culture of having really passionate discussions, but really offering up in a tone of respect and decorum in a way that allows us free speech, but also the ability to listen and to see perspectives in a way that is good for our town. That being said, we just had an election last Tuesday, and I don't want to drag national politics into the city council, which I'm not, other than the fact that I think it's important for us to remember that, I think out of all the states in the nation, we were the only one that didn't move to the right. In fact, we actually moved 1% to the left. And that being said, there's probably a lot of folks, in our region that, are struggling with what took place, and some are happy, and whatever. This is the process that we have. But I think what's important for us to remember is that we're still a community, we're still a city, and we get to be neighbors and have various political backgrounds. But at the end of the day, we're a community of Puyallup, and we care for each other, and we're going to overcome and overlook those things that maybe we perhaps agree or disagree with. But I would remind the faith-based community, there is a role, I think, that we have, and I do believe in religious freedom. And so if ever needed a time for prayer, intense times right now, some folks are struggling with the outcome, and some that are, overreactive to the outcome, I think prayer is an appropriate measure and healthy for a committee. So I would encourage our faith-based community to pray and make sure that nothing gets out of control, because we live in a great country. We live in a great state and a great city, and even though there's things that we may disagree with, at the end of the day, we're still neighbors, and we're going to live together and share life together. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Whitting.
I just wanted to mention one thing. Our, inflation has been a burden on many of our households, particularly those who are senior citizens and living on fixed income. And there's a property tax seminar available through SHAPE that explains to senior citizens the tax relief that's available to them. And I think that that's something that we ought to sponsor as a city, so that our citizens can know what relief is available to them. So I just want to bring that to our attention and request that staff arrange such a seminar and bring it to our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a note on that, we do offer services at the library. Maybe there's a way we can coordinate those for senior citizens. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to say thank you for the proclamation of the Golden Rule for the month of November, and to treat your fellow neighbor the same way you want to be treated. And with that, be well, be kind. Have a great Thanksgiving coming up in the next couple of weeks, and on to the next. Thank you.
Thank you. As the mayor, I really only have two things. First of all, this evening at 5:30, we commemorated the entry hall to the City Council Chambers, which is the Bill Stoner Chambers. We went ahead and designated that the Leonard Candle Hall, and he is a Medal of Honor winner or award recipient. He graduated from Puyallup in 1939 and was killed in World War II, but he did some tremendously heroic activities when he was there, and he was one of only, roughly 3,500 Medal of Honor winners in a history of the United States. And so we went ahead and we renamed the hall this evening after him, and I think it's a tremendous reminder when we come in of self-sacrifice for the greater good. And he sacrificed his life for this country, and I think it's a great thing that we commemorated that hall in his honor. The second thing, today there was a service for Dan Evans. who was a governor in Washington State, served in the 1960s and 1970s. He started as a representative, a state representative in the legislature, and he became the minority leader in the state legislature. And I can tell you this, that in the state legislature, there are two kinds of legislators, we always say. There's show horses and there's work horses. That's what we say behind the scenes, okay? There's those that are show horses that just get out there, they get the press, they make they look really good, give great speeches, and then there's the work horses. And everybody knows who they are. And they just quietly put their shoulders down and they get the work done. Well, he was a miraculous legislator. He may have been the minority leader of the Republicans when he was down there, but he got a lot of stuff done. And everybody knew that Dan Evans was the real deal. He was a workhorse. Well, he went on to be governor, and he was governor for 3 terms. And then during that, he established the state's community college system. That was Dan Evans. And he also established the Department of Ecology in Washington State, and Richard Nixon copied it and used it as a model for the Environmental Protection Agency on a national level. So he was, kind of a real visionary. He went on to become U.S. Senator, just was there for a very short time. And I can tell you that this is the kind of person he was. I had 2 personal interactions with him in my life. One time as a teenage boy, I was climbing in Carbon Glacier, up the Carbon Glacier, getting to Mystic Lake. And my dad was with me. My dad was a warden at the state's prison. He was involved in corrections in Washington State, fairly prominent in that area. But my dad was a very big climber, climbed all over the world, climbed Mount Rainier all the time. Anyway, I was kind of a tag-along. But I'll remember I was going with him up the left side of the Carbon Glacier, and in the distance, I could see this guy. He was hiking, and he had these kind of like security people around him. And as he got closer and closer, I could see it was the governor, Dan Evans. And so my dad was in front of me, and my dad walks by him. He goes, "Hi, Bob." And he goes, "Hi, Governor." And they kept walking. It was like they had just seen each other on a street or in the park or something like that. Casually, "Hi, Bob." "Hi, Governor." And they just kept walking. And the second personal interaction I had with him was that I formed a commission in Washington State when I was in the state Senate called the Arrow Commission, and that was to restructure state government. And I selected people on that who were what we call above the clouds. By that I mean beyond reproach. If Dan Evans said something, both Republicans and Democrats would go, "Yep, that guy's got to be right." So I talked to him, and he was in his late 70s at that time, and he agreed to serve on this commission to restructure state government. I passed it twice out of the legislature, but Governor Gregoire vetoed it twice, but that's another story. But the point is, I had great conversations with him, and he was in his late 70s and still, really smart as a tack and sharp as a tack, and I have just great memories of him. And people used to say Dan Evans, they would shake his head, "I don't know if that guy's a Republican or a Democrat." He was that kind of person. You may remember that. Debates, people used to sit around the kitchen table going, "Is he Republican? I don't know. I think he's a Democrat." They'd go back and forth. By God, he was a great model for this state, no doubt. With that, we're now going to move on to, we're going to recess. We're going to go into executive session to consider the minimum price at which real estate will be offered for sale or lease. The executive session is expected to last 1 hour. I would not wait if I were you in the audience. There will be no further action when we leave. We will just go ahead. This meeting will be adjourned without us being present. So you are free to go home whenever you would like. Thank you. With that, we are now going to recess to executive session. Thank you.